Hi, everybody. This is Johnny Winchell. We're going to talk today a little bit about creating a marketing plan that will work for you, a practical plan that's affordable and that's targeted. Leon Adams, one of the founding gurus behind the growth of the California wine industry back in the 70s, 60s, and 70s and 80s, said one time, the best wine, the best winemaker, the best grapes will all go undiscovered if the media doesn't talk about you. So it's important that you have a marketing plan to tell not only the media, but the rest of the world how great your wine is and how much you're going to enjoy sharing it with them. So here are some ideas to consider as you develop that marketing plan. Okay, you need to understand who you are. There's a book by a guy named Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore called Authenticity. And I'm a fan of that book, and because it is very applicable to our industry. In this business, you need to present to the public, to your consumers, to the media, who you are. Are you a grape grower? Are you buying grapes? Are you buying fruit? Are you buying juice? Are you using kits? What kinds of production processes are going to use? You need to make sure that you tell the world exactly who and what you're about so that they understand and respect and appreciate all that you're doing, but also because they will trust what you're producing. You need to be a real producer. In Ohio, especially, there is absolutely no allowance for shiners. Shiners are a bottle of wine with finished bottle of wine with a cork or screw cap seal, just has no label on it. And in some states, it's allowed, but in Ohio, shiners are illegal. We have lots of help in the state of Ohio. Todd Steiner, our amazing viticulture, or excuse me, enology specialist, and his crew at the research center in Worcester will help you make the best wine that you can produce. And most states around the country have some kind of a wine research arm that will help you develop your skills and make very, very good wines. Often you can find these through your own Department of Agriculture. Then you need to create this marketing plan we're talking about, a marketing plan that will reflect who you are and what you want to showcase to the world. This video is going to deal with 9 components. First, figuring out who you are, as I've already mentioned, what you can do in your tasting room to sell, some decisions on distribution and how you get that wine out to the public. We'll talk a little bit about e-marketing, about public relations, about establishing some relationships with media friends, about traditional paid advertising. There's an important role for even print, as some folks scoff a little bit, but I will tell you print is an important part of what we do. And then something we call event marketing, where you can do a special activity, put some wine in people's mouths and get them to learn a little about you and appreciate what you're doing. And then finally, rather than trying to do everything on your own, looking for a wide variety of partnerships, some within the wine business, some well beyond it that can help you. So here we go. First, who are you? You need to establish your goals, your objectives. Why are you doing this? Are you looking for a change in lifestyle? Is this a retirement project? Did you inherit a bunch of money, or does your family want to get involved so you have a multi-generational operation? Are you looking for big profits that can support a comfortable lifestyle? Are you looking just for some supplemental income? Or frankly, are you just looking for something fun to do over the next 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 years? What image do you hope to portray? Are you going to be super sophisticated? Are you going to be a champion in your community? Are you going to help drive traffic and tourism business to your neighborhood? Will you serve your wine at the mayor's inauguration? Will you provide wine for the kids' soccer team fundraiser? Are you looking to provide just a fun and relaxing atmosphere where people can come out and have a glass of wine under pretty puffy white clouds and pretty blue skies on a sunny summer afternoon? And who is your audience going to be? Are you looking for that 2 or 3% that we call the connoisseur class that are willing to pay 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 or more dollars per bottle of wine for wine that meets their expectations and their quality standards? Are you looking to provide a place for local tourists to gather? And do you want to market to those people living near your winery within a short drive? Are you looking to market to pass-through tourists, those people that are coming maybe to an attraction in your area, if you're in Amish country, if you are near Cedar Point, if you are down near Kings Island in Ohio, will you want to try and drag some of those tourists into your doors? And are you looking to attract the foodies? Wine and food pairing is a universally accepted combination in life. Improves the quality of life. Do you want to attract those folks who are very interested in food and wine quality? Are you going to be an urban winery? Are you going to have a storefront in the middle of a small community or downtown? Are you going to have a family winery that is maybe adjacent to a piece of land that you own? Are you going to have an estate operation where you grow almost all of your grapes and produce all of the wine from what's grown on the property? Are you in it for the long haul? Are you in it for a generation? Are you in it for just a short term and plan to sell? Irregardless, irregardless, the most important thing you can do with a marketing plan before it is implemented is to create that exit plan. Are you going to sell it? And then how? You're going to pass it on to your family members, and who? Who is going to take it over, and who within your community or within your family may want a piece of the action, but may not want to put in the work that it will require? Or do you want it to run it to the very end and just get out as a retirement project now, and then sell off the wine and live in the pretty house that you built that was your tasting room? You need to think about the kinds of wine you're going to produce. If you're going to produce wine for the connoisseur class, it better be darn good, and it better be vinifera. If you are going to produce wine for the locals, you'll have a mix of high-end vinifera, you'll have high-quality hybrids, you'll have some very well-made natives. But you need to understand to whom you will market, and then the kinds of wine you will produce to match those goals. In addition to wine style and quality, you need to think about price points. If you hope to charge $40 for a bottle of dry red in Ohio, it better be darn good, because someone who is buying that $40 bottle of dry red probably understands wine and has a relatively honed palate. And so if you want 40 bucks, your $40 better match that $40 bottle of wine that they can find in a retail shop. And you need to understand what value is. You need to look around at your competition. We're going to look at competition a lot later on in this video. You're going to talk about your competition being your neighbor winery, the winery from Sonoma on a grocery store shelf, or the winery at a fine restaurant down the street, or the wine that is at a checkered tablecloth restaurant around the corner. You need to then look at all of these things and create a mission statement. I am not a big fan of SWOT analysis of strengths, opportunities, weaknesses, and threats. But in this case, it is important to think about all of those things and produce a 2 or 3 or maybe 4 line at the outside mission plan, so you can continually look toward the goals that you established and see how close you are to accomplishing them. Then your tasting room. This will be your primary place to sell wine. There's a woman named Barb Ensel who is, I think she teaches in Mississippi still, but she writes a lot, and she talks about the importance of the tasting room for every winery as they launch their dream. So your tasting room is critical. We'll have a whole section on tasting room development in another video, but things to think about at the very beginning. You need to make sure that you have really good signage. You're going to have a logo, a theme, a look, a color scheme, and that signage needs to begin on the highway before they arrive, and it needs to be reflected in the piece of paper that they fill out to order their last bottle of wine. Everything in between needs to be clearly defined and clearly explained, and having the decor match the style of your tasting room. If you have a sophisticated New York style tasting room, you probably don't want to put cowboy hats on your decor. You probably want to rather have sleek couches with bright colors. However, you may want just a casual environment. You may want to do that cowboy hat with those deer heads on the wall. You may want to be hip to attract a young crowd, but make the target audience that you identified in your mission statement reflective of the audience you want to appeal to whom you want to appeal. You also need to establish a very well thought out and organized staff training program. Again, we'll do another video on staff training, but you need to have that staff, either be it you, your family, or people you hire, provide a one-on-one experience for every customer that walks through the door. You need to think about staff size. You certainly don't want to be paying $25 an hour, $20 an hour to someone to be standing around dusting glasses in the corner of your gift shop, but you need to have enough staff there to accommodate the kinds of crowds that will be coming in. You need to provide tools for your staff to learn. One of the exciting things about our business is that we attract a lot of people who fall in love with wine. And the more you know about wine, the more you want to know about wine. So you need to make sure your staff is very well educated in both your wines and in wines generally. I'm a huge fan of a book by Kevin Zraly called Windows on the World Wine Course. He talks a lot about the basics and many, many categories, talks about wines around the world, but the information in that book will help all of your staff be more versed in the wines that you're pouring in your tasting room. And you need to think about doing all of this while you're picking grapes, crushing grapes, pumping from one tank to the other, is selling wine at the local retail store by delivering it yourself. There's all kinds of time constraints that you're going to find, but you need to identify and then prioritize them. You need to remember that you are selling more than wine. You are selling memories. So you need to create an environment both in your tasting room and in the minds of your staff to encourage folks to make those memories the kinds of things that bring people back on a regular basis. If someone gets engaged at your winery, they're likely to come back after their honeymoon. After their honeymoon, they're likely to come back with their kids. And at some time or another, they may come back with their grandkids. So if you become a special place for those folks, a part of an important piece of their life, they will make you a destination on a regular basis. It is also, with time, important to know your customers really, really well. I encourage everybody to take notes when someone comes in and buys a case and there is a casual conversation with that case buyer. After they leave, I would encourage your staff to go in the back room and take some notes. There also will be, over the years, some folks that I euphemistically refer to as your electrical payment. They will come in 2 or 3 or 4 times a week sometimes, certainly 3 or 4 times a month, have a bottle of wine, chat a little bit, have a plate of food, and then go on their way to whatever else is on their schedule for the day. They are important to you, and you need to make them feel part of your family. Put their picture up on the wall. Chat with them when there is time. Make them feel special. And then you're going to have those casual pass-through tourists. Given social media and its power, it's important that you treat them especially, at least on a day-to-day basis, as you do every other customer who comes through the door, because they will tell your stories, they will take pictures, they will post on Instagram, and they will drive other folks to want to explore your winery. I would encourage you to, as the first year goes on, you sort of identify the group that I call the 20%. These are the ones who purchase most of your wine day by day, bottle per bottle, customer per customer. And I would get to know them well. I would get to know where they went to college, where they are working, where their kids may be living, what kinds of jobs they have, what they like to do for fun. And again, go back to that note taking and attempt to get a bit of a story behind their story so that when they walk in, you can chat with them about things that are important to them. Remember, the 2 most important words in a marketer's repertoire are their customers' first and last names. So the better you get to know them, the more they will feel an affinity for your operation and choose your wine over someone else's. The other book that I'm a big fan of is one called What's Your Story? It is by Patel, and it talks about the power of storytelling, about what you remember from history. Hannibal and the elephants going over the Alps, Napoleon getting stuck in Russia and having to retreat, the 9/11. All these stories are important in terms of triggering people's emotions and their affinity to a specific event or the remembrance of a specific event. So it's important. Get your staff to know your story. Understand your family, why you got into this business, who your friends are, what you were doing, what you plan to do in retirement. Is this a new adventure for you? Tell your story and let people know how your story led to this winery operation. And again, most market people, most retailers believe that that story provides a little theft insurance. If you have really good customers who feel that they are part of your experience, they're much less likely to be stealing from your tasting room or from your gift shop as they walk by. We're going to do a whole video on hiring tasting room staff, but a quick tidbit. 5% of the people who walk into your tasting room for a job are going to be fabulous, and you will hire them on the spot. 5% are going to be absolute duds, no personality, dressed not appropriately for the interview. Don't even consider talking to them. But about 90% of the people who walk into your tasting room to get a job are going to be pleasant and personable. And so what you need to do is grab the top 5%, ignore the bottom, and then take that 90%, hire nice, and teach wine. So look for personality, look for the ability to communicate among that 90%, grab them and teach them about wine. They don't need to know about wine to be a great employee for you. The other thing about your tasting room is that it provides a long dollar. You're going to have to put up with developing restroom and doing some decoration and tables and chairs and the paper products and the wine glasses in your tasting room. All of those things are a little bit expensive. But if you look at the opportunity to return the most for your investment, you need to sell most of your wine in your tasting room. It's what we call the long dollar. We'll talk a lot about the long dollar all the way through this series. When you sell in your tasting room, you get 100% of the money that you bring through the door. It only makes sense to sell all you can in your tasting room. And here's a little scenario to explain that. Let's say your bottle of wine costs $15 in the tasting room. And let's say you produce about 5,000 gallons, which is about 25,000 bottles. If you're going to have a discount and you're going to pour some in your tasting room and you're going to, take some for your holiday family gathering, let's say that those bottles of wine actually end up returning to you $13. So you will gross about $325,000 in that year. If you decide to go with a distributor, in Ohio, we are a minimum markup state with a three-tier system. You will sell that bottle of wine to a distributor for half, for $7.50 a bottle. So you are going to take only 162,000 plus for those bottles of wine. But on top of that, you're going to have to hire a salesman. You're going to have to provide a car. You're going to have insurance. So you're going to need to get at least 40 or 50,000 gallons of production. So in any situation, it is best to take the full dollar at your tasting room. I can't tell you how many people have walked into my office and said, oh, I'm going to make great wine and I'm going to go get a distributor to sell it. Unless they have very deep pockets and a very huge distribution and a whole lot of money to get that wine pulled off the shelf, because you're going to be in competition with Barefoot, which has a marketing budget, you need to not even think about it at the very beginning, and certainly probably not for a number of years. One bridge between selling all of your wine at your location as you grow is to do some self-distribution. Most states, and especially Ohio, allows self-distribution. So in your marketing plan and your business plan, you may consider after a year or two selling 25% of your production in self-distribution. So if we go through that in a 5,000 gallon operation, you're going to return about 245,000 bucks plus 25% in self-distribution. So you're going to get about $10 a bottle. So between selling in the tasting room and selling via self-distribution, and you're going to have some money in terms of delivery, you'll net about $300,000. The only way to make it go with the 5,000 gallon operation is to sell most in your tasting room and limit the distribution to that you can do yourself. Now, when you get to 50,000 gallons, okay, and you're going to sell 25% in-house, the numbers are much more favorable for a distributor. You'll do an 800,000 plus in-house and 75% with a distributor for $1.4 million. So that gives you a little better than 2 million minus your salesman expenses, and you can keep moving forward at 50,000 gallons, but not at 5,000. The other thing to consider is some states, including Ohio, has a franchise system. The distributors passed this legislation right after Prohibition, and it has both protected them and frankly protected some of the wineries. When you sign up with a distributor, especially in a state like Ohio, you give them a territory, and that territory is firm. So if you do begin to dip your toes into distribution at 20 or 30,000 gallons, you need to get into the business very slowly. Give the distributor a territory that does not include where you can self-distribute. Give the distributor a territory where you can test the waters, because if it doesn't work out, you are stuck. Jim Arbacheski, who was at Ferrante's for years, we've lost him now, said all the time, it's cheaper and easier to divorce your wife of 30 years than it is to get rid of your distributor in Ohio. So the moral of the story, sell all you can in your tasting room, self-distribution then, before you ever consider a distributor. We're going to look at the whole distributor situation in a future video. So one of the other things you need to think about is e-marketing. In this electronic age, it is always important to think about the dollars and cents that it costs to market. And the most cost-effective, not free, but the most cost-effective way to sell your wine is through an e-marketing format. That being said, do not begin with Facebook. I love Facebook. I love Instagram, TikTok. All of those videos that on Reels are important, but you should not begin with them because they are so very one-dimensional. Once people get stuck on your Facebook page, there's not much else they can learn about you beyond that page. Instead, even if you cannot afford a full-blown website, always begin with a website page, if only just a splash page. You can start. There's an app called Weebly that we've used before at the beginning for some folks. We have an amazingly talented young woman named Ashley Hayes who does a lot of work for our wineries. So affordable in both cases. Create your own or use a consummate pro like Ashley to do a splash page. So drive everyone to your splash page and then drive them from the web back to your Facebook, because it will be virtually impossible, or much more difficult at least, to get them to go from Facebook back to your web page when it's a full-blown e-marketing tool for you down the road. In terms of e-marketing, you have to pick what you can do. Again, back to time constraints. Facebook demographic is a little older, and some of the wine community, like in Ohio, is a little bit older. So to 45 plus, we can teach them using pictures. We can do some quick videos. It will attract that crowd. Instagram is primarily a picture vehicle, and you can use that to attract those people under 45. LinkedIn, which not as many people use as I think probably should, is good for professional contacts. And then TikTok for recipes and demos and wine and food pairing. Use a young face, Reels too, which is another format that you can use, and add a blog at the end. Make it valuable to your readers. Remember, it is about them. I repeat, the most important 2 words in a marketer's lexicon is your customer's first and last name. So it should not be it should be about you, but for them, and certainly for them in everything that you do. E-letters are important. Constant Contact or MailChimp are both really good sources. And once you begin posting on Constant Contact or MailChimp, those posts can later be posted on your website and can become your blog. A long time ago, when Constant Contact was just beginning, one of their speakers came to one of our conferences and spoke, and I learned so much from him. The rule is 25 to 40% of everything that you post should be education. I go back to making it about them, back to the 2 most important words. 25% approximately can be evergreen. Those are things that are standard. Pinot Noir, talking about Pinot Noir as a finicky grape, and making a red wine with lots of interesting components that is appealing. And you can talk about, the Sideways movie, all of those things. A story like that can be used again and again and again, or can be borrowed from the Ohio Wine Producers website. If you go to ohiowines.org, there are a bunch of posts up there that you can use. Please give attribution, but there are interesting things that can be stolen from someone else. Just make sure you ask for permission wherever you source it, and then post it with that attribution. And only 25% should be sales. Please do not sell. People will not open your emails after a while because it becomes self-serving for you. Remember, this e-letter should be for and about them, worth it to them. You need to make sure that the names that you collect are done legally. I have a nightmare. One time, we have like 45,000 names on our email list in Constant Contact. And one time I acquired a list of about 1,000 names from another wine industry source. And I got slapped on the hand by Constant Contact, said, "Where did you get this?" I said, "Oh, somebody gave it to me." And they said, "You can't do that." So if you're going to use names, or if you're going to use a name from some people who have uh, signed up for something somewhere, make sure you provide the opt-out opportunity. And if you collect them from a source, you might want to identify, say, "I got your name at XYZ, and we'd love to keep you on our mailing list." And then provide an opt-out at the bottom of the page. If you can do an e-letter monthly, it's good. If you're going to sell to consumers, the best time to reach them, according to my folks at Constant Contact, are Tuesday and Wednesday mid-afternoon. However, if you're talking about an event, Thursday afternoon is good because that's when they are looking to make their weekend plans. And sometimes even Saturday morning for last minute people that are looking, what am I going to do today kind of thing. If you're going to do it for another business, early Monday or early Tuesday morning are important before the craziness of their day sets in. And most e-marketing vehicles allow you to pre-schedule. Just be careful to pay attention to the news. It is easy for some tragedy to occur. God forbid, an automobile accident where someone left a winery in your area. You don't want to put a post up there about come and have a great time on Saturday afternoon, enjoy a bottle of wine with family and friends after something like that. So pay attention to the news and pre-schedule and double check your pre-schedules before they go up. It's important in this business to understand that everybody professionally is very, very busy. And so we have worked very, very hard over the years at creating media friends that are more than just sources to help us tell our story. We really have gotten to know a lot of folks in the media and respect them. And then the respect comes back mutually. We have about 20 that I can call on a regular basis and say, "I have this story, or I have this event, or I have this view of wine as a beverage of moderation that I really would like to get out because it was just something posted by the World Health Organization on the other side." They generally, as long as it's newsworthy, will at least listen to us. And if it's appropriate for their medium, we'll post something in that regard now or later. So 25 people out there should be really, really well known to you. You need to know their beat. You would not send a business writer something about something in the vineyard unless it's a vineyard in a vineyard business story. You would not send someone a story about a fire in the vineyard or a freeze in the vineyard to someone who was talking about a wine, who was a wine and food person. So the other thing you can do to build this relationship is to become the source of nearly everything for them. Once you get to know these folks, they will call you because they have a hard time. They have to produce a lot of stuff in a short time, be it on electronic, be it TV, be it radio, be it newspaper, be it magazine, especially newspapers. One time years ago, I had a gal from the Cleveland Plain Dealer call me and say, "Donnie, do you know who grows heritage tomatoes in Northern Ohio?" I said, "Oh, no, but I'll find out." And so I took a little bit of time and did a whole lot of calling around all the farmers markets that I knew, and I got back to her within about an hour and said, look, these are some sources. It may not be everybody, but they'll give you a start, and these people maybe can lead you to others. That person became a fast friend and a responsible reporter of the important things that we had to share. It was a very important relationship because I wasn't going to get any credit for those heritage tomatoes, but we sure as heck got a lot of black ink out of her over the years. The other thing you need to be careful with is off the record. Sometimes reporters earn their chops by breaking hot stories. So if there is a controversial situation going on in your area, it's best not to talk about it unless that you're asked. And then if you're asked, to be very measured in your response. Occasionally, though, they will ask someone, and you will be asked for an off the record comment. Just be sure you know them well enough and can trust them well enough, and there's a mutual respect strong enough that that off the record will not show up and bite you when it gets put into print. The other thing to think about with media is remember the youngins. Wine business is a generational business. Not so much with the media. People move around a lot, and they move up and they move out and they move beyond. But those young'uns also are the ones that get the crummiest jobs. If you are a TV reporter in Toledo and you're just out of college, you're likely to get the Christmas Eve and Christmas morning shift. You are likely to get the day when everybody else is off to watching the Super Bowl and you're stuck there reporting the weather. So if you create a relationship with these young people as they first come on board, they will remember you. There are probably a dozen people in the national media that started off someplace in Ohio with a really crummy scheduled first job with whom we still have some contact, and it's done us lots of good over the years. The other thing the media tells us on a regular basis is it is very seldom they hear thank you. When a great story appears, when they spend a lot of time writing an important story about some exciting thing going on in the business, very seldom do they hear from the folks about whom that story was written. I have a friend here in our community who has a machine called a Cricut, and she makes the coolest gift cards, handmade, hand cut. Um, and we send these out on a regular basis. I cannot tell you how much these wine thank you cards, handwritten, have opened doors for us. The other thing we always do with the media, especially our 25, is when something appears in the paper that they've moved on, they've moved up, or on something on social media that their kid is getting married and they're going to take the weekend off, we take some notes and reference that down the road in some communication we have with them in the future. And the final thing in dealing with the media, every single state in the nation has some famous locals. We have some famous Ohioans. And if you don't know who they are, go into Wikipedia and find a couple of famous people. It doesn't hurt to throw some spaghetti on the wall on a regular basis to generate some attention for you. People like their hometowns. So if you have some news folks out in the media, get to know where they're from, and perhaps they will favor you with the story if you drop an email to them on a periodic basis. The best example I can give in Ohio is a guy named Al Roker. His family's from Cleveland, and he mentions Cleveland on a regular basis. Drew Carey was the same way. I'm not sure how far we're gonna get with Travis Kelce, but we're gonna try. Okay, once you exhaust all the time and energy you have and all the resources you can dump into electronic email and social media marketing, you really need then to go back to traditional and paid advertising. You need to think about it carefully. It's expensive, but you really do have to use it as a tool. And for newbies, the best thing is the first couple of months are going to be free. You are going to send out news releases. Remember, don't send the same news release to the ag reporter, to the food writer, and to the business writer, but send a release out to all these publications with a different focus, and some of it's going to hit and gather you some attention. Be careful again with off the record. and make sure what you send out is newsworthy. The fact that you have a band playing on Saturday night is not newsworthy. But the fact that you brought out a local high school graduate who's made it in Nashville to come back home at your winery will be a newsworthy article about music. So think about the release and how it would be newsworthy from the journalist perspective. If you're looking at print and magazines, make sure you look at when they release their annual calendar. Sometimes there is a 3-year lead time for a major story. Several years ago, we got an 8-page spread in Midwest Living. I mean, Midwest Living advertising rates are about $50,000 a page these days, and we got 8 pages because we worked very hard with the editor and sitting next to her one day at a lunch. And 3 years later, the story showed up. So that is a long-term project and doesn't always bear fruit. But much easier would be to take the magazine and look at the pieces and parts of these categories, these columns that they have. So maybe if they have a column about what's to do in the month of May, you might get a listing there. Maybe if they have a column about new businesses opening, you may get a little piece there at last minute. Doesn't take a 3-year lead for those kinds of things. Again, depending on how much time you have, there's a book called The Writer's Market. And The Writer's Market is, I don't know, probably 500 or 600 pages filled with niche publications, little publications with narrow areas of interest that you may be able to target. The best example, the most successful example of all of that is a guy named Harvey Posert, who is Robert Mondavi's publicist. When Mondavi opened his winery, he had very, very little money. And so he hired Harvey Posert. I got to sit next to him a couple times at meetings, and I just sort of just soaked in everything I could learn from him. Poster's idea was this. He wanted to target the influentials, not the influencers, not the people who have lots of media followings and are TikTokers, but the influentials in Harvey Poster's definition were the presidents of companies, the executive directors of the chambers, those business people in a community or in an industry that are sort of leaders in their realm. When Mondavi opened a new tasting room facility that had a meeting area next to it, Poster targeted Successful Meetings magazine to tell a story about this new meeting room that they had adjacent to the winery in Napa. He spent about 6 paragraphs on that and then 2 pages on the Mondavi mission, on the arch, on the whole story about how Mondavi came to be. So what he did was use the opportunity to break into a niche publication and then tell the Mondavi story. He did it again and again and again. When they put a new pumping system in, he went to Flow magazine, which is for pumping, for pumps. And he did a little story about the new pumps and a big story about the mission. He would go to the trucking magazines and he would go to the publications that focus on the people who own big trucking firms, the RLs and the Schneiders of the world. And he would do a story about the fact that they've added a new truck, or maybe they've added some used, more friendly electrical trucks versus gas powered trucks, and then did the whole story about the mission. So look at those ideas. Look for a niche publication. How is something you're doing new and special fit into the interest of someone in a totally different industry? In newspapers, remember to send your segment releases by topic. Don't overlap. I've said that a couple of times. Don't send a ag story to the business writer, and don't tell a story about your new POS machine to a guy who writes about vineyards. The other thing I think we ignore sometimes are these weeklies. Every community has weekly publications, and they pretty much will take what you sent to them verbatim. So they don't have a whole lot of writers, and those writers are so overworked. They have to turn out 20, 30, 40 stories a week. They are crazy busy. But if you write a column, they will print it for you. We have a whole bunch of columns on our OWPA website. Steal them. Just give credit, please. And those weeklies are good because they sit around for a long time. Sometimes the newspaper doesn't come. Sometimes it's late. Sometimes you've already read that, and that weekly is sitting there on the table. You might want to look over it again with a cup of coffee or a cup of tea in the evening. And these weekly publications also have a lot of event opportunities. So get on their lists. And again, if they call to ask you for help, be the expert for them in an area well beyond just the wine that you produce. Radio is very difficult. It's very segmented, especially with Sirius radio now. So if you're going to buy radio time, you always ask for value added. Get on a talk show, give away tickets, make friends with the key people so they talk about you well after, before the event, but well after the event. Invite them to your event so they just you become part of the chat that they have in the studio the next morning after the event. TV is probably not workable for most people on a small winery budget, but we have one winery in Northeast Ohio that is just a master at getting on the talk shows. The gal from Grand River Cellars is there all the time, and she is personable, and she follows up, and she is very, very, very good at following national trends, trying to offer a local twist. Think about the opportunity to get on those morning talk shows. They need good local content. But bottom line, back to the newbie, the first 4 months of free stuff. In every case, when they give you something free, make sure that you spend your money with those that have been good to you when you have a budget to do so. Do not forget them. They will notice, they will pay attention, and you'll gain a relationship that is stronger with every opportunity. One thing people don't think about is events. Lots of folks go to events. They go to events and sell their wine, and they go home, and that's all they do. We are a firm believer in something called event marketing. Never, 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 never do an event for its own sake. You need to establish goals. We'll do something later on about the importance of a lifetime visitor that you pick up there, but you want new traffic to your tasting room. You certainly want some cash. You don't want this to be a drain. You want to sell some wine for sure, but you want some publicity. Maybe the local paper will come and take your picture as the one pouring the wine at the event, and maybe you want all of the above. But over the years, those goals, your winery's goals, may change. I'll give you an example in a little bit. You need to take advantage of partnerships. If a local bank is there sponsoring your event, either as a group with the other wineries or yours individually, make sure that when you have an opportunity, you open a checking account with them. If a car dealership is coming to give you money as a sponsor for one of your shows, one of your programs, one of your events, make sure you walk into that car dealership and buy your car from them. Sponsors are ever more difficult. It's hard to get a sponsor. In the 90s, when we started Vintage Ohio, sponsors wanted to get their names out. Not so much now. Almost all sponsors are looking for a cause with whom to associate. So if you can add a cause to your event, it is much easier to get that sponsor to be involved. Also, you need to allow adequate lead time. Most corporate budgets are built in the fall for the following year. So September and October are certainly not too early to approach a funder for some dollars for an event that might take place in August or September. So plan some lead time. We've had very unsettling experiences with things like Groupon. Flash sales have their place, but the first or second year Groupon came out, I was so excited. We sold thousands of tickets to Groupon. However, we marketed them on our regular channels, which meant that all of our regular folks who normally would pay full price for a ticket paid half price. And of that half price, we only got half of the half minus the service charges. So we lost tens of thousands of dollars by using Groupon. We have used Groupon at the end of an event when we're a little short, but we're very careful because if you tag on a Groupon discount at the very end, everybody who purchased a ticket at full price a couple of months earlier is going to be incredibly irritated. So you have to be very careful with how you use things like Groupon. We never allow the Groupon price to be less than the lowest price we offered our regular customers. And then we take a little less, they take a little less. In addition, for every event that you do, you need to follow up with the vendors that you might have there, with the attendees who have participated. You need to make your event better and better each time. So surveys are critical. And we're going to talk a little bit about lifetime customers and how important they are down the road. Let me give an example of how festivals have morphed. This is a festival called Vintage Ohio, which was started in the 1996, I think was the first year. The winery was new. The wine industry was relatively new in Ohio. We just began planting hybrids. Only maybe 1 or 2 people in the state were growing any vinifera. The world didn't know we existed. There were about 25 of us around the state. We needed a vehicle to let people know that Ohio wines were there, and we needed to drive traffic to tasting rooms. We needed to build media awareness, and we needed to build partnerships with sponsors and other folks with our CVBs. And we needed to teach the wineries how to do festivals so that they could down the road plan their own. And they needed to make money eventually. An association eventually would make money and would support other projects. Right now, Vintage Ohio supports about 35 to 40% of all the activities we do in the association. It allows us to do many of the things, including these videos, because Vintage Ohio is a cash flow for the organization. However, Vintage Ohio has changed. The wineries that were well established are now on retail shelves. They are now in restaurants. They don't need an awareness. So the current Vintage Ohio is much more designed for new wineries. Certainly customers for all, because actually one of the busiest days at some of the existing wineries in the region is the weekend of Vintage Ohio, for people who don't necessarily want to go stand in a field in the sunshine to sample wine. They really are reminded that wineries exist. But we now use vintage to introduce the new Ohio-grown viniferas. We do a high-end VIP event for them. We drive tasting room traffic to the new wineries. We build awareness for the distributors. Every year, the distributors will come to us and say, who are the biggest sellers at Vintage Ohio? And then individually tap them the opportunity perhaps to take them on as a wine client. We also have more opportunity to do things with media and with tourism. We can work with our beds and breakfast to fill them. We work with our lodges to provide transportation. And there is much more emphasis on the money coming to the wineries that attend, not necessarily down the road. However, we emphasize that the primary goal is to develop long-range, long-term, longly loyal customers to everybody. So, to make your winery successful, you don't need to be an island in the middle of the ocean. There are lodgers who come to who have business because of your winery's existence. So you need to talk to them and create some marketing plans. Maybe they will offer discounted tickets for midweek visitation for you and a discounted room rate. So think about how a local lodger, look at their needs. Midweek traffic probably is slower than weekend traffic, and see if you can put a package together with them. Livery services are critical. Again, they will bring lots of people to your doors and they will take them home safely without having to worry about drunk driving. I will say, though, that we always try and have these livery services end up at a lodging facility. Dumping them in a parking lot after they've been drinking all day probably is not a good idea for anybody involved. But they will sell lots of tickets to new faces and help market you. So you can sell them tickets for your events or to your tasting room experiences at a discount if they bring them to you. Your local tourism offices need heads and beds. So you can help them do that. You can do the one-day events, but if you can put together a 2 or 3 or 4-day event, their local tourism offices will help you market because they need those heads and beds. If you develop media partnerships, understand that they seldom will provide cash. You need to spend some money with them. But generally, you can take that $1,500 investment and parlay it into $2,000 or $3,000 by getting value-added opportunities like ticket giveaways and trades for on-air time. So there are lots of opportunities with media. You're just going to need to spend some money with them if they're going to reciprocate to you. Non-traditional partnerships, if you have someone works at a car dealership, maybe if they give a test ride, you give them a coupon to come back for a complimentary cellar tasting. You can't give away free wine in most cases, but they can help you. If you're doing an event and you're coordinating the event, they can give away tickets to the event. Maybe if you develop a relationship after the event, you can do a tasting at their dealership when the new car models come out. Again, check your legalities. You can do Kodak moments with an Instagram spot, maybe a sponsor with their logo being displayed behind on the background for the Kodak moment spot will give you some exposure when your name and their name are together on that back banner. Work with chefs, work with restaurants. Maybe they can do some cooking demonstrations for you. Maybe if they send traffic to your winery, you can send coupons back to that restaurant for a half off or a discounted appetizer or something to that effect. So it's important that you figure out how you can work with these other partners. Sponsorships are difficult. You need to look at the sponsor. And again, same thing as with the marketer. What is the most important sponsorship pitch you can make? The question is, what do they need? And then when you fulfill what they need, then they will provide some service for you. We're going to do a lot more online: staff training, cause marketing, difficulty guests, crisis planning, signage, reading materials, insurance, vineyard establishment, applications to TTB and labeling, all kinds. But thank you very much. We hope this is helpful. And there'll be a long series of things. These are all going to be available to Ohio Wine Producers members and on a vehicle called Teachable eventually to the general public. Thank you.